In this video, we're going to go over two additional concepts in genetics called penetrance and expressivity. These terms will help us to quantify the relationship between genotype and phenotype. Remember that genotype is what is in our DNA, and phenotype is what we see expressed in the protein. So penetrance and expressivity help to quantify this transition from DNA to protein. Starting with penetrance. Penetrance is defined as the percentage of people with a particular allele or genotype who express the phenotype that we would expect. So this would imply that not everybody with a particular genotype will necessarily show that phenotype. An example can be found in the disease osteogenesis imperfecta. To kind of simplify this, it's a complicated process, but to simplify it, basically there is a protein in bones called collagen. You need this collagen for the correct structure of bones, and if you mess up the collagen, you mess up the bones. And in collagen, you have a lot of amino acids, which I'm just going to draw as X. You have an amino acid called glycine. Glycine is a small amino acid, but sometimes it becomes mutated into a bulky amino acid. And when that happens, the collagen complex gets distorted, it can't fold properly, and bone development does not proceed as you would expect, and you develop this osteogenesis imperfecta. However, osteogenesis imperfecta, the mutation for that has less than 100% penetrance. In other words, if you had 100 people with the mutation in the DNA, that would make you think that they would get messed up bones. That doesn't happen because not everybody has this transition. So looked at mathematically, let's say we had 10 people with that mutation. So they all have that mutation on the DNA level that would make their collagen be mutated. However, let's say, I'm just going to make up a number, let's say penetrance in this case is out of 10 of these individuals will actually express the phenotype. So even though on the DNA level you may find that mutation, on the phenotype level, on the level of the collagen, only 60% of them will actually be bones. So the penetrance is the number of people who actually develop that phenotype out of the sum of individuals with the allele. So all of these gray dots have that allele, but only 6 out of 10 of them actually had the improperly developed bones. Okay, so that's penetrance. When we look at the concept of expressivity, we're actually looking at the degree to which phenotype is expressed. So, in this case, we assume 100% penetrance of the allele. In other words, if you have the allele, you're going to get the phenotype. The question with expressivity is how much of that phenotype are you going to display? So, as an example, let's look at a disease called neurofibromatosis. In this disease, the people with that allele get as their phenotype tumors in the nervous system. So if you have the allele, you're going to get the phenotype. In this case, if you have that mutation, you're going to get the phenotype. In other words, we know penetrance to be 100%. You're going to get the phenotype. However, in this disease, there is variable expressivity. In other words, some people with that allele will get more sick, they'll get more tumors, and some people will get less sick, they'll get less tumors. So if we look at that in sort of a diagram, let's say I'm going to use a purple color to represent this mutation. And remember, we said 100% penetrance, meaning if you have that mutation, you're going to get sick. But the size of my mark here is going to reflect how sick. So the bigger the circle, the sicker the individual, the more tumors they have. So all of these people have the mutation, and all of these people are sick. But some of them are more sick than others, okay? So the size of the circle representing perhaps a degree to which they have tumors in the nervous system. So in this population of 10 people, all 10 have the allele, all 10 develop tumors, but some got more than others. So to summarize, penetrance answers the question yes or no. If they have the allele, will they or will they not develop the phenotype? Expressivity, on the other hand, answers the question how much. In this case, we can only define expressivity if we know there to be 100% penetrance. And if we know that, we know they must get the phenotype with a particular allele, but the question is how much will that allele actually be expressed? So penetrance is yes or no, expressivity is how much. And that concludes our video discussing these two concepts which help us to quantify the genotype to phenotype relationship.